Okay, hi. First I want to start off by asking how many of you voted in the 2008 presidential election? Okay. Now I want to ask how many of you know what the Electoral College does? Okay. Well, for those of you who don't know, the Electoral College is actually a group of individuals known as electors whose primary responsibility is to provide final votes in the presidential election in the United States. So, for our claim, we think the Electoral College should be banned. And our three supporting claims are: winner take all is unfair, popular vote does not always win, and the public would prefer a direct popular vote to elect the president. So this so-called winner-take-all system artificially divides the country into red, blue, and swing states. Since the Electoral College allocates each state's vote in a winner-take-all method, there is no reason for a candidate to campaign in a state that already favors them or their opponents. For example, Democratic candidates have little incentive to spend time in solidly Republican states like Texas, even if many Democrats live there. Conversely, Republican candidates have little incentive to campaign in solidly Democratic states like Massachusetts, especially when they know that states like Florida and Michigan are toss-ups. The Electoral College gives disproportionate voting power to states, favoring the smaller states with more electoral votes per person. For instance, each individual vote in Wyoming counts nearly 4 times as much as the Electoral College as each individual vote in Texas. This is because Wyoming has 3 electoral votes for a population of almost 500,000, and Texas has 32 electoral votes for a population of over 20 million people. By dividing the population by electoral votes, we can see that Wyoming has an elector for every 165,000 people, and Texas has an elector for every 652,000 people. But the swing states aren't the only way the president-elect can get votes. The small states with fewer electors have an advantage in the campaign. In a study done encourage presidents to respond to issues concerning all Americans, it was stated that campaign consultants now admit that they only care what voters think in a small number of states. The campaigns don't even bother polling in most states. One consultant for Senator McCain recently acknowledged that the 2008 presidential campaign will likely focus on just 3 states and around one particular issue, the economy, that is particularly important to those states. Neil Newhouse, a Republican pollster, said, "It's not whether he wins or loses the issues nationally, it's whether he wins it in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania." The problem with that is that not every state has the same economic problems. Also, the winner-take-all rule also leads to lower voter turnout in states where one party is dominant, because each individual vote will be overwhelmed by the majority and will not, in fact, count if the winner takes all the electoral votes. This brings me to my second supporting claim, which is popular vote does not always win. Since 1980, the voter turnout has been really low, and because of that, it sparked an organization called Rock the Vote. And Rock the Vote's mission is to engage and build political power for young people in order to achieve progressive change in our country. It was founded nearly 20 years ago to help get the younger generation go out and vote and help make a difference in the world. One of the articles, increased voter turnout, was stated, voter participation was 10 points higher in the 12 swing battleground states in 2004, which received nearly all of the attention of the candidates, compared to the 12 safest states that are routinely ignored. It makes sense. If a voter knows that one candidate will carry their state regardless of how they vote, then they have little incentive to make the trip to the polls. And even though that Rock the Vote worked for some states, its main purpose of getting more people out to the polls didn't work. And even though more voters appear at the polls in the swing states, the president-elect with the popular vote did not win. In one case, the most recent one, which is probably the most famous, was when George Bush won the electoral votes in Florida, when Al Gore had more popular votes in the nation. And by that, George Bush was able to win the presidency because of that. And this brings me to my last point, which the public would prefer a direct popular vote to elect the president. New York Times did a study that found in 2000, after the Bush victory, that 6 out of 10 would prefer the popular vote system. And a more recent study done in 2007 was that 72% of respondents supported a national popular vote for the president. These results have been consistently high for decades and span across political parties, different ages, and different demographics and ethnic groups. So as you can see, the studies show that most Americans feel that the popular vote is the better way to go.